Paul, first of all, how would you say the economic situation is impacting on airlines, particularly in terms with their product development and introduction of new products going forward?
Well, who knows? The world is changing daily, hourly. I think we're going through unprecedented changes. The economic instability is affecting all aspects of global commerce and global trade. What that means for airlines is that everybody's very nervous, everybody's very cautious. What that means for product development is that every dollar has to really work very, very hard. So we've always had to prove return on investment. We've always had to prove that R&D has a valid commercial role in the company. Today we're having to work even harder.
And do you think that will lead to the end of what we call the traditional legacy airline model? Will we see a move towards passengers choosing to pay for particular service elements rather than paying for it up front?
We have an incredibly sophisticated passenger, a very, very sophisticated consumer that know what they want, and when they've made a decision, they want the product very quickly. They want good quality product, but they want value at the same time. So that's not going to go away. What is going away, I feel, is a long-term view of class. I mean, the class system is becoming increasingly irrelevant as a purchase driver in the more sophisticated Western markets. Class is still very, very valid in the emerging markets. So class is very important for China, it's very important for Russia, it's very important for the BRIC economies, Latin America, where status is still very much a form of self-expression in the business community. In Western markets, it's less relevant. You know, we're seeing people now scrutinizing the product more and demanding more value for money. And I think we're seeing consumers picking and choosing what elements of product they want. So on this particular journey, I may want to lounge and I want to sleep. On that journey, I may want to work and I may want to play. So it's just a matter of time before an innovative carrier or a courageous carrier challenges the class system with a series of options that you could buy, lifestyle options or functional options that you could buy during the flight.
And what do you think the key enablers will be to that sort of product revolution where passengers are picking and choosing what they want on their flight? What things will need to change or will need to happen from the current situation to really bring that to fruition?
You know, Anthony, I don't think it's rocket science. I do think it's understanding functional and emotional needs of passengers. And, there are some sectors that get that really, that understand that. The hospitality sector inherently understands customer needs. To some degree, the retail sector, the automotive sector. The airline sector works very, very hard, but there's still a long way to go. So understanding different needs at different stages in the customer journey and offering products and services that match. I mean, there's still a massive job to do with travel. I mean, think of security, for example. I mean, even in the magnificent new T5 building in London, there's still an archaic bureaucratic approach to security, which isn't 21st century. So a big job can be done there. That's just one example.
Paul, what are some of the wider trends out there, and how are they relevant to our airline readers?
We're noticing 5 interesting themes or 5 trends that we're observing. The first is what we're calling a polarization of the experience. For those that are lucky enough to be in the first class cabins, the experience has never been better. 10 years ago, an airline would be inspired by a hotel. Now, hotels are being inspired by airlines. So I'm thinking of some of the magnificent work by Qantas, for example, a $10 million lounge in Sydney. Yet some of the US domestic carriers have stripped cost out to the extreme, where there is now, very, very little product to differentiate. So, first class is becoming better, economy is suffering. Delays are still commonplace, unpredictability. There's still trade disputes in some countries, union disputes in some countries. So that's an interesting trend. The second trend is we're seeing a renaissance in the basics. Get the basics right before you offer the frills. So again, what good is a first class, what good is a cashmere throw-in first class if my flight has been delayed by 3 hours? Some airlines have discovered E. coli living in their washrooms. So, airlines need to be clean, they need to be safe, they need to be well maintained. Only once you've got the basics right can you then dare to offer the frills and a more sophisticated product. Sustainability, that's on everybody's lips, and quite rightfully so. Be prepared for the anti-flight movement. It's 5 years away. It's gaining traction. So, Virgin America are doing some very interesting things with carbon offsetting. So you can actually pay for your flight in terms of offsetting your carbon use. I would be a fool if I could predict the future. So my big prediction is unpredictability. I've known you now for 10 years, Anthony, and no one could have predicted the changes that our industry has seen over the last 10 years. No one could have predicted those. 9/11, deflation, deregulation, war, SARS, disease, unprecedented changes, the whole boom of the private jet market. So how can anybody predict the next 10 years? People will still want to fly. Flying will become increasingly politically incorrect. I can see a day where the products that we buy will have an environmental label. This is the damage that these products are doing to our environment. Rather like a food nutritional label, I can see the days of products having an environmental awareness label of, by consuming this product, this is the damage that you're doing to the environment. So sustainability is going to be a key trend, probably the biggest theme, factor, issue that's going to dominate ideology, politics, trade, the economy for the next 50 years. Sustainability is here to stay.
You're here visiting the exhibition. What are you looking for then, and how do you think some of these trends will eventually manifest themselves in the products that we see here in a few years' time, for example?
Well, as a designer, I'm delighted to see that design is here. Design is now fundamental to what's going on at this great trade show. 10 years ago, design was here with a smaller presence. It was more of a stylistic exercise, but design has now got a real voice in the aviation industry. We're seeing integration. We're seeing clever strategic partnerships between designers, manufacturers, engineers, and airlines at a very early stage, developing super product. We're seeing design really differentiating product now. We're seeing a design battle, which is great. And also we're seeing experience being taken seriously now by all stakeholders within the airline industry. Again, 15 years ago, experience would have been a terminology really kept within the marketing teams, but now everybody's understanding experience and the role of experience and how experience can differentiate a branded product.
And finally, one last question. Teague, you're now working for. What's Teague's objectives going forward?
Teague is a one-stop shop. It's probably the world's only fully integrated design, research and development, engineering, and even certification service. There are very few companies that can manage the whole process. Teague can do that. We've got a very well-established and very special relationship with the Boeing company, of course. We've been working with Boeing for the last 60 years, but we also partner with commercial airlines as well. So we've done some super work for Emirates recently and for Virgin Australia, and we want to continue to grow our portfolio of airline brands. And our vision is to humanize the travel experience. It sounds like a very grandiose vision, it's a very simple vision, but there are still so many parts of the travel experience that are devoid of humanity. Airlines, aircraft interiors have still been evolved by engineers. It's still an engineering-led culture, and I've got a lot of time for engineers, and we wouldn't be here without them. But now we're seeing design help engineering find a consumer voice and to find a connection with the passenger.